Hello everyone, hope everybody's doing great today. Appreciate those of you who've been watching this video. I hope you enjoy it. Also appreciate those of you who have subscribed. Thank you very much. Today we're going to talk about The Last of the Mohicans, 1992 version. So this is like the end of the trilogy for me. As far as I know, there's no other versions of this. This is the 1920 and 1930s and the 1992 version. Maybe another country did one. I don't know. Maybe there's one out there I haven't heard about, but this is the Daniel Day-Lewis one and the Madeleine Stowe, hopefully I said her last name right, version of this movie. And it's a little different from the other two movies, as this one more concentrates on the relationship between the colonists and the good British people here. One thing that is a fact about these three versions is that they make the British look wimpy. They are a bunch of wimps. All three versions are getting their butts kicked, which is kind of ironic because, you know, they did win the 7-Year War. The French and Indian War was run by the British, but they get their butts kicked by the French, and then they get their butts kicked by the Native Americans, and they're always getting their butts kicked left and right in these movies on all versions. And this one is no different, maybe even worse than this one. No, the worst one, I gotta take that back, is the 1920 silent film version. That is brutal. The way the British get killed on that one is terrible. They really get their butts handed to them on that one by the Native Americans. Makes you wonder. All three versions really make you wonder how, you know, British end up winning the 7-Year War and conquering North America. How us white men were able to conquer the red men, because they get their butts kicked in all three of these movies. Magua in this one, he's out for a good revenge. It doesn't really, I don't think it really hints very well why he's on revenge in this one. The other two versions of this, I'm going to compare it to a lot to the previous versions. The other two versions of this movie, we don't really know why Magua, he's not really out for revenge, you know. He just thinks that the French would be better than the British. And this one, there's something personal going on. Maybe the British guy killed his family or something, but it doesn't really explain why he's after the British. Maybe it was, and I just missed that part. But he's out for revenge. He wants to destroy him. He wants to take his daughters, rape them, and kill them. He's out for blood, and he gets for the worst way, and he does it pretty good at this one. A lot of scalping going on, but to me, this is the 1992 version is the best version of the three movies. Daniel Day-Lewis as Hawkeye, fantastically played by him. Daniel Day-Lewis is a great actor, by the way. And you got Madeleine Stowe doing a real good job as the oldest Monroe girl. And this one goes more of the relationship between her and Hawkeye. The other two versions are more about the relationship between the Native American and the Mohican guy and one of the sisters. The 1920 version is the oldest sister. The 1930s version is the younger sister. And this one, the younger sister, that relationship isn't really conveyed in this movie. Just at the end, you know, I don't know if it really, I'm trying to think, it hasn't really conveyed at all in this movie. It's like that relationship isn't really concentrated at all in this movie. He dies fighting to save her, but I feel like it came more across of him fighting to save her for Hawkeye's sake, and then for him trying to save the girl he loved. And then she commits suicide because, you know, these movies always got to end on the cliff. And she commits suicide not because the guy she loves fell off the cliff, but because she doesn't want to become raped from these Native Americans, and she's unaware that more help was coming to her to help her out. So like that relationship's kind of basically non-existent, but it does concentrate more on the Hawkeye older Monroe daughter relationship, and, you know, her coming to understanding the way that the colonists think over here, because there is a big concentration of this movie between the relationship between the British and the colonists, and there's a lot of foreshadowing in this movie about the Revolutionary War coming up, because, you know, the men over here are worried about protecting their families from the French and from the Native Americans, and the colonists are just like, you know, not the colonists, but the British are like, we rule over you, you must do what we tell you to do. You got to put your country, that country, Britain first, over the motherland over the bastard land. I don't know. Over your land here, that mother country is more important than your families. And there's a lot of arguments between that. The people over here are wanting to govern themselves. So you got a lot of foreshadowing. I mean, if you want to do a sequel, it would be like the Revolutionary War would be the sequel to this 30 years later, stuff like that. But yeah, so it is really concentrates on those two areas, the colonists' relationship with England, and then the relationship between Monroe, his oldest daughter, and Hawkeye, and how she's coming to love him and his ideas of what life is and the frontier. Get a little bit of commentary on indentured servitude and why the colonists are moving west. It's to get away from the government. They were basically slaves for whatever their contract told them they were slaves for. If you do your history research, you'll find out that indentured servants were more likely to die, and then the slaves from Africa, because they had a contract, so they were worked harder to the bone, because they only had them for 4 or 5 years, while the slaves from Africa, while they were worked hard, they were for a lifetime, so they didn't work them as hard as the indentured servants. And then so these people are moving out west to get away from the government, and it's kind of like that's the history of the United States. People going west, trying to get away from a big government, and now we've been kind of brainwashed to thinking big government's good for us. For the most part, for half the country, big government's good, but in our infant years, government was bad, and you tried to escape it. Unfortunately, we ran out of land out there in the Pacific. So I don't know if I already said this before, but the musical score is excellent in this. The music really captures this atmosphere of this movie, the emotions that they're trying to portray on screen. You can't get any better music score than what's in this movie. And its cinematography, as they're showing, I'm pretty sure this has to be New York, right? Northern New York, maybe Pennsylvania area. How you got a lot of widescreen shots here. You can see the landscape of the land. If you go to New York and Tennessee, it's basically like the same landscape, basically. Very beautiful. Makes you want to go there. Makes you want to live there. Very well done. And then the battle scenes are really great. Not so much. Let's see. I'm trying to think here. I'm sorry. That's why I stopped. I'm trying to think. Even when they're laying fire onto the fort. I've watched 3 versions of these. I'm trying to get, one version they don't really show the siege of the fort. That's the 1920 version. But this one, the cannonballs landing into the fort, very well done. When the Indians sneak attack the British as they're leaving land, excellent shot. Everything's really done. It kind of reminded me a lot of like Gettysburg, how Gettysburg was shot, and of Gods and Generals, that big battle. You're following the warriors, getting placed up, and then going and massacring the British. I did like the fact that when the Native Americans talk, there's no subtitles, so you kind of feel like you're the English there. You're trying to understand what they're saying just by their body language and the tone of their voice. If there's something bad or good. I do like that there's no subtitles for the Native Americans. Overall, fantastic movie. If they did another version of this, I probably would watch it. Depends on who was in it and who was directing it. They probably would ruin it in this day and age. No, I wouldn't watch another version. Just leave it at the 1992. We don't need a modern, another version for modern audiences in this. I would say what cracks me up on these movies, though, is how accurate the musket is. And we're talking about a mile away. These dudes are hitting people a mile away with these muskets, which is like impossible, nearly impossible. You're getting lucky more than anything else. Anyways, hopefully you enjoyed this. What do you guys think of The Last Mohicans? Do you think it's a great film? You think it's overrated? You think it's underrated? It's a movie that's not really talked about anymore. And it came out in 1992. I'm trying to think what blockbusters came out in 1992. I know it's very highly graded back then, like highly praised back then, but I think it won Best Picture Award or anything like that. You know, back then, Oscars really had good movies when they put them up for nominations and stuff. Like, people actually watched the movies that were nominated. Nowadays, they put movies up there that hardly anybody have ever seen. I don't know, just how it is these days, I guess. Anyways, have a great day. Bye.